Welcome back to my channel. It's been at least, I think, two months since my last my last video. And there's a lot that's been going on, including a move from Northeast Tennessee, 900 miles south to Southwest Florida. And there's a lot of other stuff that's been going on with the move and all that, and having to nurse a very, very ill little doggy back to health. Thankfully, he's improved greatly. I know a lot of you put some really encouraging notes in my community post about our sick dog, and I thank you for your prayers. I thank you for your encouragement. Anyway, let's get to it. I wanted to just talk about the election just a little bit, but in a different way than I've seen anybody else talk about. And it's not going to be some kind of analysis about the election. Don't change the channel. But I wanted to talk about whether or not maybe Catholics in the U.S. helped end wokeism through this last election. And again, I'm not going to get into the weeds about the election and who voted where and what, all that kind of stuff. I'm just saying that for the first time in many, many, many years, Catholics, according to a lot of different polls, voted in the majority for Republicans. Catholics voted Obama into office, voted for Clinton all the time. There are a lot of Catholics that vote Democrat. Why? I don't know, but they do. I can remember back in 2016 going to an NO parish for Mass and seeing so many Hillary bumper stickers in that parking lot. It made me sick to my stomach that any Catholic could bring themselves to vote for somebody like that who loves abortion, okay? Made me sick to my stomach, but that's another topic for another time. But one little aspect I wanted to delve into here: did the Catholic vote help end wokeism? And drilling down a little bit more than that, I wanted to talk about the whole Black Lives Matter situation. Lots of Catholics bought into that. A lot of Catholics bought into the Black Lives Matter ideology, and it sickened me. It's absolutely disgusting that any Catholic could ever think of doing that. Black Lives Matter is an organization that was founded and rooted in Marxism, racism, definitely, the occult, the LMNOP ideology. It's all wound up in that. It's inextricably wound around each other. And for any Catholic to actually embrace that blows my mind. How any Catholic of good conscience could embrace that is beyond me. And again, it was started from a lie. Do you remember the whole hands up, don't shoot thing from 2014 in Ferguson, Missouri? That was a lie. That was a lie. But people bought into it. Boy, did they buy into it. And then in 2020, when St. George Floyd was martyred, died of an overdose, because that's how he really died, people couldn't wait to jump. They were stepping over each other to put the Black Lives Matter flag in their social media bios and fly the little flag or the little black square. And there were so many Catholics that bought into it. So many Catholics that just jumped for the chance to do that while denigrating and running down America's police officers. It was a shame. It was disgusting to see that. I lost friends over that. I lost family members over that. Heck, the ideological inspiration for Black Lives Matter is a woman named Assata Shakur. I mean, it's a contrived name. That's not her real name. I forget her real name. But she's a convicted cop killer that fled the United States. She escaped and fled the United States and is living free to this day in Cuba. President Trump, we need to go get her and bring her back here so she can face justice finally. But that's another video for another day. So many Catholics embraced an organization that routinely and openly called for the rape and the murder of police officers' wives and daughters. They openly called for and got the murder of police officers themselves. Members of Black Lives Matter murdered police officers. And that didn't make any Catholics that supported them stop and think, what's going on here? No, it didn't even ring the bell for them. Back in 2020, I still had a brother. I still do. He's still active. I have a brother that's in law enforcement still. I retired back in 2017. But my younger brother followed me into law enforcement. He's still on the job, as is one of my nephews. He's on the job. I worry about them every single day, especially since both of them followed me into law enforcement. They told me that I was the example that they used, and they wanted to be a cop. If something happens to them on the job, I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself. So when 2020 happened and St. George Floyd was martyred, I was retired 3 years at that point, but I was still pretty heavily involved in the law enforcement community. I was doing consulting work and things like that, still very much plugged in. And it broke my heart. It broke my heart to see the profession that I loved, the profession that I gave 30 years of my life to in service to my fellow citizens, being denigrated and run down and besmirched and making it look like all we are a bunch of thug murderers. It broke my heart. It really did. And I remember becoming depressed over this. And I'm thinking, I can't even take solace in my church because I see bishops, I see leaders of the church, leaders of like Catholic charities, things like that, making videos saying, as a white man, I am racist and all this garbage. But you have successors of the apostles, Catholic bishops, taking a knee, fist up in the air, holding a Black Lives Matter sign. What is wrong with these people? Again, he's advocating for an organization that stands diametrically opposed to everything that the Holy Catholic Church teaches. Great job, bishops. You had bishops marching in these BLM, I won't even call them protests because they weren't, they were riots. In addition to these bishops that sold out, too many Catholic media types bought into the Black Lives Matter thing. The worst was a woman named Gloria Purvis. She was on EWTN, some morning show, radio show that they had, black female, and boy, she's a perfect example of somebody who makes race an idol, okay? Makes an idol out of race. She obviously puts race above all other things, including Christian charity. She bought into the Black Lives Matter garbage, hook, line, and sinker. She took it just all the way. And it ended up actually ruining her career at EWTN. Thankfully, EWTN did the right thing and got rid of her. But she and I got into it on social media over another police officer involved shooting with a black person. It's gotten to the point where if a police officer has to use force on anybody of a minority status, they're automatically in the wrong. And Gloria Purvis made this point to me, or tried to. She wrote, well, look at how many officers have killed people in the line of duty as opposed to how many have been indicted and brought to justice. And I said, wait a minute. Police officers, statutorily, by law, we're allowed to use force. Okay, we don't ever want to. The reason why most police officers are not indicted and put on trial for officer-involved shootings is because 99.9999% of them are justified. They're justified. That's why they're not brought to justice. That's why they're not indicted and put on trial. Use your head, Gloria. And what's really sad about the whole Black Lives Matter, wokeism thing is it wasn't just the woke libs that were denigrating police officers and running the profession down. Conservatives bought into it. I mean, I don't watch Fox News anymore. I haven't in many years. But after the Floyd thing, when Black Lives Matter really exploded, you had pundits like Dana Perino, that guy Tyrus on Fox News, Tucker Carlson, okay? And I know I keep using the word denigrating, but they were denigrating cops left and right. Tucker Carlson's always had a problem with cops, and he didn't align himself with BLM, neither did Dana Perino, but she did say that, she understands how Black Lives Matter can feel, and she used the stupidest rationale for it. She said something along the lines of, she's got a black friend who's a police officer, and he gets pulled over all the time for no reason. Highly doubt that. I highly doubt it. I'm sure she does have a black friend that's a police officer, but he probably drives like a maniac, okay? There is no other organization in the history of this country that's more dedicated to the fact that Black Lives Matter than police officers are. All lives matter to police, okay? I spent 30 years serving black people and any other people of any other race, color, creed. I didn't care. If they were a victim, I gave them my all. If they were a bad guy, didn't matter what they looked like, they were going to jail. That's how most other police officers in this country act. Yeah, there's outliers. There's police officers that break the faith. And we, good cops, are the first ones to want to bring those guys down. If they break the faith, that hurts us. And we're more than happy to drum them out of the profession. And I don't want to make this about Fox News or whatever, but there were two guys on Fox News that always have had cops' backs. One was Jesse Waters, still does, talks very highly of police officers. And what's funny is now that the pendulum is swinging the other way, you don't hear Dana Perino making those comments anymore. You don't hear Tyrus making those comments anymore. Tucker Carlson, he's banished to his own little channel. I don't care what he says anymore. He probably still is talking all kinds of garbage about police officers. I don't care. Greg Gutfeld on Fox News. Awesome guy. I had the pleasure of meeting him. I worked the detail on one of his book signings. Great guy. Loves cops. He's always had our backs. Thank you, Greg. You know, and another thing that was really disheartening after the Floyd incident was the USCCB put out a statement condemning racism in relation to the whole Floyd thing. My question was then, and it is still now, where is there any evidence at all that racism played a part in what happened there? There is none. There was nothing that indicated that that officer was a racist or had racial or racist intentions in what he did. He completely messed up. He did everything the wrong way. Okay, just a little inside baseball here. Cop 101. When you have somebody that's obviously high on drugs or in any circumstance, you don't handcuff a suspect and then keep him laying on his stomach. Police departments all over the country know this. Every officer in this country knows that, because you run the risk of positional asphyxiation. You know, we used to, if a guy really resisted badly, very aggressively and very violently, we'd end up handcuffing him and actually hog tying them, you know, wrapping up their ankles and then attaching that to their handcuffs. And we throw them in the backseat of a car face down. Well, guess what? Too many of them started dying that way. So we were like, okay, we can't do that as a profession. We can't do that anymore. Get him seated up as soon as it's possible. If he's still fighting and still kicking and still trying to hurt people, you do what you got to do, even if he's handcuffed. But what we started doing was, look, let's get him handcuffed. Hopefully the fight will have stopped. Sit him up so he can breathe, and then get him into the car. If we have to take his feet, you know, out of the equation and wrap his feet up, we wrap his feet up. We put the strap through the door of the car and shut the door. And then that way, at least his feet are secured as well as his hands. So this officer, he did the wrong thing. Yeah, but he didn't murder him. He didn't murder Floyd. Floyd murdered himself with an overdose. That's fact. And one of the funniest aspects, and I don't mean funny for real, but one of the most idiotic aspects of the whole Black Lives Matter thing is those who will sit there and say, well, there's a difference between saying that Black Lives Matter as a concept and buying into the organization itself. There's a difference there, and people can say Black Lives. No, if you're saying Black Lives Matter, it references right back to the organization. If you're flying a Black Lives Matter flag, it references right back to the actual organization. If you have a black square in your profile on social media, it references right back to the organization. I'm not buying that. That's such an equivocation. It's so disingenuous. It's just stupid. And I've never been under the delusion that cops are loved or should be loved. I'll never forget my first day in the police academy. The head instructor comes in and he's doing the welcome speech or whatever. And he said, if you're here because you want to be loved, liked, or even respected, you're in the wrong academy. The fire academy is right down the hall. That's where you want to go if you want to be loved and thanked and respected and all that other stuff. Right here in this room, you're going to be nothing but vilified. So if you wanted to sign on for that, let's go. Let's get at it. And and I've been called the worst names imaginable by suspects and other people and just people in general as I'm driving down the street in my patrol car. But I've had my family threatened. I've had the worst things said about my family, about my mother, my wife, my daughters. And I've had my life seriously threatened by some very serious people. Okay, I worked undercover narcotics for many years. And I took down some pretty organized narcotics rings. I'll never forget, my radio designation used to be 772 November meaning narcotics. And so the bad guys, they'd hear me on the radio. I'd stop them and, arrest them and all this stuff. And then I'd get on the radio, 772 November. So people knew my radio ID. And I started driving through this one part of a city that I was working, heavy narcotics area. And I started seeing graffiti with 772 or 772N line through it and 187, which is the California penal code for murder. I guess they watch too many movies. But I mean, there were people actually calling for me to be murdered. I was followed. People were sitting outside my house at some point. Bad guys, and that had to be dealt with. So I'm under no delusion that people love cops. All that stuff just rolls off my back. It doesn't make any difference to me. I know I was doing the right thing, and that's all that matters. But the thing is, when you started to see otherwise very good, decent, honorable people buying into the Black Lives Matter lie, that's when it started really turning for me. And that's when it started hurting. I'm like, you would go to some ordinary Joe to take a delayed burglary call, and I'd be watching the body cam footage from my officers taking these reports, and just the snide remarks coming from, Joe workaday six-pack guy, or, retired electrical engineer, just saying the stupidest things about the police. And that's when it really started to turn for me. And that's when it really started to affect me. And I have to say, Catholics in general, I think, have always had an anti-Catholic bent to them. And I never understood why. And I'll never forget, I used to have to attend Mass in uniform because I often had to work Sundays. So I would take my lunch break or whatever. I'd go to Mass, and I'd stand in the back. I wouldn't, and I always got with the pastor too, who was very supportive of me coming in uniform, especially. And I got with him. I'm like, hey, Father Tom, I got to come on duty. I'll just stand in the back. I won't, He's like, no, go sit. You're here, that kind of thing. He was very, very cool about it. But still, I kind of just I didn't want to be, a distraction to anybody during Mass. So I would just stand in the back. But as people would come and go or see me come in, I used to get the dirtiest looks from my fellow parishioners in uniform. Or if I'd be over at the church, because I used to take my lunch break and pray the rosary in the parking lot and things like that, and eat my lunch in the parking lot, I'd get the dirtiest looks from my fellow Catholics. And I would contrast that with, we had a huge evangelical megachurch right down the street from my parish, and populated by a lot of former Catholics, fallen away Catholics, I may add. And I'd have to go there every once in a while for a call or, for some other duty-related thing, never religious-related. But I'd walk in there. I couldn't walk 3 feet without somebody stopping me, shaking my hand. Hey, thanks for being here. Thanks for the job you do, this and that. If I wasn't so rooted in my Catholic faith, I can see why people are drawn out of the church and into that kind of atmosphere if that's all, and that's all you're looking for. But that was a real contrast to me that stood out very starkly. And I think it's still, to a large extent, still present in today's Catholic Church. The whole Black Lives Matter anti-cop movement, it kind of culminated in the defund the police movement. Brilliant. That was such a brilliant move, people. Yes, let's vote to defund the thin blue line, the one thing standing between you and utter chaos, you and wolves at the door. Let's defund these police officers. And that's the thing. Again, you had good, honest, decent people buying into that and saying things like, well, you know what, maybe we should take some funding from the police and reinvest it somewhere else, and have maybe mental health experts responding to certain calls. Brilliant. That was brilliant. What happened? Crime went through the roof. Murders went through the roof. Cities are now largely unlivable. Brilliant call, guys. Let's defund the police. And then they mix in that stupidity about the police becoming militarized somehow. And Catholics were in the forefront of that. You had Catholic politicians spewing that garbage. And again, I see on social media all these different Catholics, to one extent or another, buying into that garbage. It was disgusting to see. As a result, what happened? We see crime went through the roof. Criminals didn't care. They didn't fear any kind of retribution from the law. They went and did whatever they wanted to do, and they're still doing it. And cops left the profession in droves. They took early retirement or just quit and left and went on to some other kind of profession. And I don't blame them one bit. Not only that, but the ones that stayed, they became reactive instead of proactive. Proactive cops, and I was one of them, they get some complaints here and there. Because if you're not out there being proactive and taking down bad guys, you're not going to get complaints. If you're one of those officers that just drives around until they get a call, to go respond to a delayed burglary or something and take your paper and just here it is, and you're not actively looking for bad guys, then it doesn't matter. But it's the proactive officers that keep crime down. And thankfully, most officers were at least proactive. Now, cops are afraid to be proactive because why? It gets them in trouble when they shouldn't be in trouble. God forbid they have to use force against a minority. They're automatically vilified. They're automatically considered a suspect themselves. And that's wrong. But the good news is, again, from this last election, I really see a turn. I really see that pendulum swinging back. And I think Catholics are waking up. And I think Catholics were part of the end of wokeism. It's still out there. We still have a lot of work to do on that front. I mean, they still have Hollywood. They still have the media. But people are waking up to it, I think, including Catholics. My estimation, it's going to take a generation for this to really get made right if we keep going in the right direction. So, just as U.S. Catholics helped create this mess, I think they're helping to clean up the mess. And it's heartening. It makes me feel good to see this move. And I just hope that we keep going. And no, Trump is no savior, okay? And to be honest with you, I really wrestled with even voting for him this time because he backpedaled on the whole abortion issue, and his Catholic vice president is not where I would want a Catholic to be abortion-wise, but whatever. But it's still better than any Kamala presidency would have been. Oh, I shudder to think what would have happened then. So I think we just have to look at the good that's been done here and have a good attitude for the rest of it and keep praying for the soul of this country. I think we're moving in the right direction. I think prayers absolutely help. I've done so many novenas in relation to that, and I know a lot of you have as well. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Do you also have people, friends, family that you lost because of the whole woke thing, even if it's not the Black Lives Matter idiocy? I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. Hopefully this is the start of a new batch of videos I'm going to be putting out regularly. We're in this new house, and we haven't been able to really decorate the way we want to yet. A lot of the rooms are very echoey, so I hope this comes out okay. And I haven't really figured out which room to use as a studio. Neither has my wife yet. And please put in the comments, get on her channel, get on her community posts, whatever. Tell her to put out another video. I've been after her to put out another video, and she's busy. She's so busy, I know, and she really wants to, but we have to kind of goad her into it. Let's give her a kick in the rear and tell her to put out another video and start putting out more videos. A couple of videos, what I want to do is talk about my first experience at an FSSP parish. Also talk about a little bit about the move and what happened. You would not believe what happened in the move from Northeast Tennessee down here to Southwest Florida. And also about our dog and what happened with that and whether or not Catholics should spend money on their pets like some of us do and have. So until next time, thanks for watching, and Padre Pio, Ora pro nobis.